Welcome to Sleepy Historian, where old tales whisper by candlelight and memories gently drift into dreams. Tonight, let us journey back to a time long asleep in history.
Settle yourself into comfort, perhaps reclining in your bed or resting in your favorite chair. Allow your breathing to find a gentle rhythm as we prepare to drift together into another time, another world. Tonight, our journey takes us to the heart of the Ottoman Empire, into the narrow streets, bustling squares, and cavernous halls of Istanbul's Grand Bazaar. It is one of the oldest and largest covered markets in the world, a place that still breathes with centuries of trade, labor, and the hum of countless lives passing through. But our exploration will not stop there. Together, we will wander through the daily struggles of those who toiled under heavy burdens. We will follow the extraordinary path of a woman who rose from enslavement to power beside the Sultan himself. We will peer into the quiet chambers of Topkapi Palace to contemplate relics said to be touched by prophets. And finally, we will step into the silken world of wealthy merchants whose fortunes were woven from spice and silk. Each part of the story will unfold slowly, like the turning of pages in a book you need not finish tonight. If sleep should overtake you, that is welcome, for history has a way of continuing whether we are awake or dreaming. So, let us begin by stepping into the immense and echoing halls of the Grand Bazaar, where life for many was not as glittering as the jewels on display. Imagine yourself entering the Grand Bazaar in the 16th century, when the Ottoman Empire was at its height. The light filters in dimly from latticed windows above, casting long shadows across uneven stone floors. The air is thick with a mingled sense of spices, cinnamon, saffron, and cloves blended with the earthy smell of wool, leather, and sweat. Everywhere you turn, there's sound. The rhythmic clatter of hammers shaping silver, the murmur of bargaining voices, the creak of wooden stalls being opened for business. But cutting through this symphony of trade are the grunts and heavy steps of the hamals, the porters. Their job was simple in description, but brutal in reality. Day after day, they carried immense loads upon their backs, straining under weights that could exceed 100 kilograms. Bundles of cloth stacked taller than themselves, crates of ceramics, sacks of grain all lashed together with ropes, pressed into the curve of their bent spines. Picture them, bare feet gripping the stones for traction, bodies slick with sweat, shirts darkened by the constant pressure of ropes cutting into skin. The rhythm of their labor was relentless load after load, haul after haul. For these men, the bazaar was not a place of wonder or wealth, but of endurance. While others paused to examine gleaming silks or sip from cups of coffee in shaded stalls, the porters moved endlessly, ghosts of labor weaving in and out of the crowd. They were often among the poorest workers of the city, men who had few other choices. Payment came in coins that were just enough to survive a roof for the night, bread for the day. There was little chance of upward movement, no ladder to climb except perhaps a slightly better position carrying goods for a wealthier patron. The bazaar's constant noise only added to their weariness. Imagine spending hours in the crush of voices, the clang of metal, the bellow of merchants hawking their wares. There was no true silence, no pause for reflection. The sound became part of their bones, a background hum that accompanied each aching step. And yet there was a rhythm to this life, a certain familiarity in the suffering. The porters knew each stone of the floors beneath them, each turning alleyway within the covered halls. They were, in a way, the invisible lifeblood of the bazaar. Without them, the flow of goods would stall. Merchants might possess riches, but without the bent backs of these men, the jewels and silks could not move from ship to stall, from stall to buyer. Occasionally, a small moment of rest would come leaning against a wall in some shaded corner, adjusting the thick leather pads strapped to their shoulders. Perhaps they would exchange a few quiet words with another porter, or glance longingly at the trays of food carried by sellers weaving through the crowd. Skewers of meat, warm bread, cups of cool water. Then, before long, another load would be hoisted and the cycle resumed. Life for these men was rarely celebrated and even more rarely remembered. Their names are mostly lost to time, but their toil remains imprinted in the very stones of the Grand Bazaar, worn smooth by their footsteps. So, when you imagine the grandeur of Istanbul's markets, with its gold and its spices, remember also the unseen struggle. Imagine yourself hearing not only the melody of commerce, but also the deep, steady rhythm of strained breaths, the shuffling of sandaled feet, and the unspoken endurance of those who carried the weight of empire literally on their backs. In this way, the Grand Bazaar was both magnificent and merciless, a place where wealth sparkled in stalls, while just a few steps away, men labored endlessly, unseen, uncelebrated, yet essential. And as the day moved on and the sunlight slanted through the high windows, the porters would continue their endless march, fading into the background of history, their sweat mingling with the spice-laden air. From the bustling markets of the Grand Bazaar, let us now leave behind the echoing stone halls and step into another part of Ottoman life. This time not among the porters and traders, but within the gilded and shadowed walls of the imperial court. Here, life unfolded in whispers and in silences, in long corridors draped with carpets, and in chambers where decisions shaped the empire. It is within this world that we find one of the most remarkable figures of the Ottoman age, Roxolana. Her story begins far from Istanbul, across the plains of Eastern Europe. Born as a girl named Alexandra or Anastasia, likely in what is now Ukraine, she lived an ordinary life until fate and misfortune intervened. In her youth, she was captured, perhaps in a raid, and brought southward as a slave. Her journey was not unique in its sorrow. Many women were taken in such a way, bound for the slave markets that supplied households and harems throughout the empire. And yet, from these difficult beginnings, Roxolana would rise to a place few could have imagined. Within the harem of Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, she at first would have been one among many an enslaved concubine, trained in the skills expected of the Sultan's companions: grace, beauty, conversation, perhaps music or embroidery. But gradually, she drew Suleiman's attention. Her red hair and bright presence set her apart. But it was her wit, charm, and resilience that truly distinguished her. Suleiman gave her the name Hurrem, meaning the cheerful one. And with that name, her identity shifted, just as her life did. For most women of the harem, bearing a child for the Sultan might bring temporary favor, but not lasting influence. Yet Roxolana bore not only one child, but several, and with each birth her position grew stronger. She became not merely a concubine, but a confidant, and eventually, his legal wife, something unusual, almost unprecedented for a sultan. Imagine her chambers, soft cushions, ornate lamps casting warm light, latticed windows looking out onto the gardens of Topkapi. And within those quiet spaces, she wrote letters to Suleiman filled with careful words of affection and counsel. She accompanied him not only in his private life, but also through correspondence and his campaigns, offering encouragement and subtle advice. Yet her rise was not without controversy. Her presence altered the balance of the court. Other concubines, rivals within the harem, saw their influence diminish. Advisors and officials worried about the growing power of this woman who had once been a slave. And indeed, the consequences of her influence would ripple through the empire. It was said that she encouraged Suleiman to favor their sons over his eldest, Mustafa, born of another mother. This shift in favor would lead, tragically, to Mustafa's downfall, an event whispered about in the corridors of power, and remembered by historians as one of the darker turns of Suleiman's reign. Still, Roxolana's legacy extends beyond intrigue. She became a patron of architecture and charity. Across Istanbul, she sponsored the construction of baths, mosques, and schools. One of her most notable contributions was the Hasaki Harem Sultan complex, which included a mosque and a public kitchen that fed the poor. In this, she shaped not only the life of the court, but also the daily existence of ordinary people. Her life illustrates the extraordinary contrasts of the Ottoman world, a woman taken against her will, who rose to hold influence equal to queens, whose name is still remembered centuries later. From enslavement to empress, her journey is one of resilience, ambition, and remarkable transformation. As you imagine her world, allow yourself to picture the stillness of palace halls, the soft rustle of silks as she moved through them, and the low murmur of voices plotting, advising, persuading. Within those walls, Roxolana shaped the rhythm of empire not with the noise of the bazaar, but with the quiet power of influence. And as Suleiman's reign stretched onward, her presence by his side remained constant until her death in 1558. Yet even then, her memory lingered in stone, in institutions she had built, and in the stories whispered about her stories that still survive, echoing like the faint sound of footsteps through the palace corridors. From the private world of Roxolana, let us step deeper into the palace itself, into chambers quieter still, where footsteps soft against marble floors, and the air seemed heavy not with noise, but with reverence. Here, in Topkapi Palace, a collection of sacred relics has been kept for centuries. Objects believed to be linked to prophets and to holy men, preserved behind glass and under constant watch. Their presence made the palace not only a seat of power, but also a place of spiritual weight, where empire and faith intertwined. Imagine walking through those halls in the 16th century. The palace gardens fade behind you as you move toward the pavilion of the Holy Mantle, where some of the most treasured relics were displayed. The atmosphere changes as you enter. Hushed voices fall quieter, sandals brush softly along the carpets. The light is dimmer, filtering through lattice windows, glinting faintly on gold-inlaid boxes and jeweled containers. Among the relics kept there, you might see the Prophet Muhammad's mantle, carefully folded and stored. Nearby, there was said to be a sword attributed to David, the harp of Solomon, and a staff believed to be that of Moses. Each artifact carried stories layered upon stories, tales that connected the Ottomans not only to their own faith, but to the larger lineage of prophets and kings. The presence of these relics gave the sultans a powerful sense of legitimacy, to rule not only with armies and wealth, but also with the mantle of guardianship over sacred history. For visitors, envoys, scholars, and travelers, the relics conveyed awe, reinforcing the grandeur of the empire as both temporal and spiritual authority. But as with many relics, there were mysteries. Could these objects truly be what they were claimed to be? Were they authentic, passed down carefully through the centuries? Or were some perhaps later creations imbued with meaning through belief rather than through certainty? These questions lingered, though, in whispers. For the faithful, the objects radiated power regardless of their provenance. For skeptics, they were symbols whose importance rested not in their material truth, but in their role within the life of the empire. Imagine yourself standing there before a glass case in the cool dimness of the chamber. You hear the low murmur of Quran recitations, which even today are performed continuously in the presence of the relics. The sound is steady, like the flow of water, unbroken, calm, unending. It fills the air, mingling with the faint scent of incense, drawing visitors into a state of quiet contemplation. For the sultans, the relics served as more than treasures. They were emblems of divine connection. To stand as their protector was to affirm one's role not just as ruler of lands, but as guardian of faith itself. In times of uncertainty or war, their presence offered reassurance. The empire was watched over, its destiny tied to sacred lineage. To this day, the relics remain in Topkapi, where visitors can still pass through those same chambers. Yet even now, the aura of mystery lingers. Were these truly touched by prophets? Or are they instead relics of belief, their power drawn not from physical history, but from centuries of devotion and reverence? As you imagine yourself there, picture the quietness, the stillness of the room, the dim light on gold and crystal. Let the sound of steady recitation drift into your thoughts. The relics rest in silence, whether they are fragments of divine history or symbols of imperial faith. Their mystery remains intact, unchanged by time, unchanged by the countless footsteps that have passed before them. And so, as the palace walls close around us once more, we carry with us this sense of reverence, this calm mingling of faith and empire. Before we step into yet another contrast of Ottoman life, not the sacred or the burden, but the wealthy and the powerful merchants of Istanbul, from the hushed chambers of Topkapi Palace, let us return once more to the beating heart of the city. But this time, instead of walking in the footsteps of porters or kneeling in reverence before relics, we slip quietly into the world of the wealthy merchant, one of Istanbul's most powerful yet often unseen figures. The city was, in many ways, the crossroads of the world. Caravans arrived from Persia with silks dyed in deep blues and reds. Ships came from India and Arabia, carrying spices, pepper, cinnamon, cloves that perfumed the very air around the docks. From the distant New World, through the channels of European traders, came tobacco and precious stones. Coffee, dark and bitter, arrived from Yemen, soon to become a beloved drink throughout the empire. Imagine, if you will, the home of a wealthy merchant, not as ornate as the palace, but still filled with signs of prosperity, richly woven carpets that softened the footsteps, brass lamps that glowed warmly against painted walls, and shelves lined with porcelain and glass brought from faraway lands. The merchant himself might wear robes of fine cloth, his turban wrapped in bright silks, each fold a mark of status. His life was marked not by physical labor, but by negotiation. He spent his days in counting houses and caravanserais, weighing profit against risk, deciding whether to send goods eastward or westward, whether to buy at one price and wait for the market to rise. His words, his decisions, were his tools, and they built fortunes as surely as stonecutters shaped the walls of the city. And yet, wealth did not mean ease. A merchant had to balance constantly between opportunity and danger. Pirates could seize ships on the seas. Caravan routes could be disrupted by war or bandits. A single storm could send an entire year's profits to the bottom of the Mediterranean. To succeed required not only luck, but careful alliances with guilds, with financiers, and often with officials in the palace who might open doors or secure permissions. The coffee houses of Istanbul became their meeting grounds. Within the low-lit rooms, smoke curled slowly through the air, and men reclined on cushions while sipping thick, bitter coffee. Here, news traveled faster than caravans. Whispers of prices, rumors of war, tidings of opportunity, these shaped decisions more than ledgers did. In such spaces, the merchant was not merely a buyer and seller, but part of a web of influence. For the wealthiest among them, fortunes were vast. A successful spice merchant could live in luxury, his family dressed in imported fabrics, his household served by attendants. Some merchants sponsored mosques, fountains, or schools, leaving behind legacies that linked their names with the city itself. Others quietly financed the ambitions of officials or extended loans to guilds, ensuring that their influence spread beyond trade into politics. Contrast, for a moment, the life of such a man with that of the porter we imagined earlier. One bent his back beneath crushing loads, barely earning enough to survive. The other sat upon cushions, his fingers stained with ink from accounts, his fortunes rising and falling with markets rather than with muscles. Yet both moved within the same city, perhaps crossing paths unknowingly in the bazaar. One unseen in his toil, the other invisible in his wealth, each essential to the empire's pulse. In this contrast lies the essence of Istanbul itself, a city of splendor, and hardship where fortunes were made and lost, where the sacred brushed against the commercial, and where every street carried echoes of empire. As the lamps of the bazaar dimmed, as the coffee houses emptied into the quiet night, merchants would return to their homes, minds still turning over numbers, profits, and risks. And porters, exhausted, would curl upon simple mats to sleep. Both lives so different, so intertwined, would begin again with the dawn, under the same call to prayer echoing across the city. And so our journey through the Ottoman Empire draws to a gentle close. We have walked with the porters, burdened by loads that bent their backs. We have lingered in the quiet power of Roxolana, a woman who rose from captivity to shape an empire. We have entered the hushed chambers of Topkapi Palace, where relics rested in shadowed reverence. And we have reclined in the coffee-scented world of merchants, whose fortunes rose and fell like tides upon the Bosphorus. The empire, in its greatness, was not a single story, but many lives interwoven: toil and luxury, faith and commerce, burden and power. Now, as you settle back into stillness, perhaps let your mind drift over those images, the shaded halls of the bazaar, the quiet of palace chambers, the glow of lamps in a merchant's home. The past stretches out like a vast tapestry, threads woven together, each telling its part. Rest now, knowing that history continues even as we sleep, its stories always waiting, quiet and patient for us to return.
Tonight's story comes to a close. If your eyes have gently shut, then I wish you a deep, peaceful sleep until we meet again in the next dream.